Wednesday night, Charlotte. Bank of America Stadium is packed for the 2026 MLS All-Star Game. Lionel Messi isn't there. Again. He hasn't been there in 2024. He wasn't there in 2025. 3 years since joining Major League Soccer, and the most famous athlete on the planet has never played a single minute in the league's biggest showcase night. This is the story of why the show keeps going on without its biggest star, and what that pattern actually says about the toll a career like his has taken. Start with this year, because the timing makes it almost impossible to argue with. 10 days before this All-Star Game, Messi was on a pitch at MetLife Stadium, losing the World Cup final to Spain, 1-0, the closest he'll likely ever come to adding an international trophy his country didn't already have. Argentina had made it further than almost anyone expected heading into the tournament, grinding through the knockout rounds match by match. Messi's name still the first one opposing coaches built their entire game plan around, even at 39. The final itself came down to one goal, in a stadium that had spent the entire tournament waiting to see if this really would be his last World Cup appearance. It was. Argentina lost. Messi didn't get the ending the whole sport had spent weeks writing for him in advance. Rodrigo de Paul, his Inter Miami teammate, stood right next to him in that final. Both men were named to the All-Star roster anyway. Both men were pulled off at days before kickoff. This time, there was no suspension attached to it, a detail that matters more than it sounds like it should. Here's why. Last year, in 2025, Messi and teammate Jordi Alba simply didn't show up to training sessions before the All-Star Game. No official withdrawal, no announcement, they just weren't there. MLS handed Messi a one-game suspension for it. This year, Major League Soccer and the Players Union agreed on something new before the season even started. Any player who reaches the World Cup final gets an automatic, protected rest period once eliminated. No conversation needed. No suspension risk. Messi and de Paul didn't skip the game. The league excused them from it, in writing, before either man said a word. That's a rule built, almost certainly, because of exactly this situation happening the year before. Here's the pattern in full, because it's longer and stranger than just this year alone. 2023, not selected. He'd only just arrived in the league, and wasn't eligible yet for a roster spot in his first partial season. 2024, selected, then withdrew. An ankle injury suffered in the Copa America final against Colombia forced him out before the tournament format even got the chance to include him. 2025, selected again, then simply didn't turn up to training, a decision the league read as fatigue management and punished with a one-game ban. 2026, selected a third time, withdrawn again, this time protected by a brand new rule written specifically for players who go the distance at a World Cup. 4 selections. 0 minutes played. Every single year, a different specific reason, injury, fatigue, a new rule, a World Cup final, and every single year, the same result. If you think MLS was right to protect its stars from burnout after a World Cup final, drop rest in the comments. If you think the league's biggest signing still owes its showcase game more than 3 straight no-shows, drop duty. Let's see which one this comment section actually believes. To some, that's simply what happens when you sign a 39-year-old who has spent over 2 decades absorbing the physical toll of playing at the very top of the sport. Nobody should be shocked that a body carrying that history needs to be protected from an exhibition game that means nothing in the standings. To others, there's something harder to ignore in 4 years, 4 selections, and 0 appearances. At what point does the league's biggest draw skips the league's biggest night stop being a pattern of bad luck and start being the honest, ongoing price of what his body has left to give? Both things can be true. An all-star game genuinely doesn't matter competitively. And a signing built partly on marketing a global superstar to American audiences still loses something real every single time that superstar isn't the one standing on the pitch when the cameras are rolling. Here's exactly how much is riding on that presence. Before Messi arrived in 2023, Inter Miami reported $56 million in annual revenue. By last season, that figure had climbed past $200 million, a valuation of $1.45 billion, the highest of any club in Major League Soccer. His jersey has topped the league's bestseller list 3 seasons running. Field-level seats for his home matches have sold for over $16,000 apiece. That's the strange part. Every graph points upward. Except the one-night fans actually expected him to headline. None of that happened by accident. Lionel Messi's name on a team sheet, not just his highlight reel, his actual presence in the building, changed what people were willing to pay to be in the same stadium as him. The effect reaches well beyond Miami, too. Since his 2023 arrival, Major League Soccer has set back-to-back attendance records, crossing 11 million total fans for the first time in league history. League executives will point to the World Cup, to a new Apple broadcast deal, to plenty of other factors. But almost every honest accounting of the growth still starts in the same place, July 2023, the month Messi signed. Which is exactly what makes his all-star absences such a strange contradiction. The league's biggest attraction has never once appeared in the league's biggest exhibition. For times now, on the one night built specifically to sell his impact to the widest possible audience, he hasn't shown up at all. Inter Miami's ownership clearly isn't worried about the long-term picture. Messi extended his contract through the 2028 season, quieting years of anxiety about what happens to the franchise the moment he eventually retires. The relationship isn't in question. The night in Charlotte just isn't part of it. There's one more detail that makes this year sting a little differently for Inter Miami's fans specifically. While Messi and DePaul were away recovering, the club unveiled its newest signing, Casemiro, fresh off his move from Manchester United, making his Inter Miami debut over the weekend. Casemiro didn't come to Florida chasing a retirement paycheck in the abstract. He came, by his own account, specifically to play alongside Messi, to add his own winner's mentality to a locker room already built around one. He's the god of football, Casemiro said of his new teammate on his way through the door, not a passing compliment, but the stated reason he crossed an ocean in the first place. Casemiro crossed an ocean to play beside Messi. On the night Miami introduced him to the fans who'd waited months for this exact pairing, Messi wasn't even in the building. Meanwhile, the rest of the show went on without any of them missing a beat. 9 other World Cup players still suited up for the All-Star Skills Challenge and the match itself, none of them having gone as deep into the tournament as Messi and DePaul did. Son Heung-min scored twice in 3 minutes. The MLS All-Stars beat Liga MX's best, 4-3, in front of a sold-out crowd that came for a spectacle and got one anyway. That's really the quiet tension sitting underneath this whole story. Major League Soccer built an entire commercial strategy, arguably an entire era of American soccer's growth, around one player's arrival in 2023. 3 All-Star games later, that same player still hasn't played a single competitive minute in the event built to showcase exactly what he brought to the league in the first place. Maybe that stops mattering the day Messi finally walks out for one of these games healthy, rested, and ready, and reminds everyone in one night why his signing changed the league forever. The door for that is still open every single July. Or maybe it never happens at all, and the real story of Messi's MLS All-Star career ends up being written entirely in absences, for names on a roster sheet, and 0 minutes on the clock. Nobody outside Inter Miami's own training ground knows which version this eventually becomes. What we do know is this, for All-Star selections: 0 appearances. The biggest star in American soccer became the biggest absence. And somehow, MLS kept growing anyway. Subscribe for more stories the headlines haven't caught up to yet.